Every language learner out there is interested in how to make more progress, but what is progress? The first thing that I want to talk about today is a bit more meta than usual, and that is the difference between progress that is measured and progress that is, well, felt. Progress that we can actually measure is pretty straightforward. You find a quantifiable metric, track it, and then later on see how you stack up. This could be anything from the number of vocab words that you learn in a week, how many pages you can get through in your textbook, the percentage of workbook questions that you get correct, or even something like your level that you've determined on a language proficiency exam. You know, some of these other famous polyglots, they have their own unique ways that they measure their progress. Luca Lamparello likes to measure his progress by the stack of study papers he has at the end of a study session. Steve Kaufman likes to measure the number of books and articles that he's read on Link. And Lydia Makova likes to measure the pages and full gold list method notebooks that she completes. How you measure your progress can be very different depending on how you decide to study. But what about that progress that just can't be measured? Progress that can only be felt. Since it's not quite measurable, it is a bit vague to describe, but it's the feeling of understanding more of a TV show, the more episodes you get through in a series, although not really knowing how much more. Or when you're speaking and you just suddenly feel more free and more expressive in what you can actually say, but you're not exactly sure what changed. Or maybe you just have a moment where the language just kind of comes from the heart and you don't even understand what you were trying to say in your native language. You just kind of like feel it. What about those moments? For the last couple months, I've really been in more of this, I guess, feeling stage of progress. I was really getting into Pimsleur because, not only did I kind of seriously recommend it as something that all beginners of a language should do, but I was seeing results so fast that I figured, okay, this is definitely something I should focus on. Because my husband learned German by watching cartoons as a kid, he highly recommends to me that I do the same. And so we watched all 150 or so episodes of Pokemon Sun and Moon together. While showering, I would listen to Easy German, and while doing something like cooking or taking a walk, I might re-listen to one of the episodes that I really enjoyed. At bedtime, I would write a journal entry in German, which my husband would then correct for me, and then, it's raining a lot out there. But yeah, he would correct my journal entries, so every day I was also writing in German. At the same time as all this, I was constantly watching YouTube videos on how to best learn languages as far as different apps and methods, and I was applying them. So much so that I made a whole video on consistency, habits, and language learning that you can see in the link below. But I was seeing a bunch of people learning the language, so I was keeping my motivation up there. I was doing some really fun things with it, and I was actually starting to learn the language in a way that I never really could before. Like, I just started to get it. But what slipped through the cracks were things like finding a good textbook or a grammar resource or vocabulary lists. I was doing all this learning on the fly with content that I just found interesting, and frankly, it was pretty random, like just random stuff. Pretty sure that I've learned some like more advanced things, but also some very early and beginner sort of things, and a lot of things are missing in between. There needs to be a balance, because if you don't measure your progress, then you don't actually know if you've really improved at all. But at the same time, if the only thing you do is measure, sometimes that can demotivate you to the point where you just stop learning language completely. And so I came to this sort of stumbling block. I had this feeling that it was about time I actually find a way to measure my progress and see where I am. So I did what I can only describe as the most joy-killing thing that you could possibly do if you're not following a structured study plan, and that is to take a language proficiency exam online. Now, if you're learning in a rigid and systematic way that most textbooks would bring you through the content, then something like this shouldn't be a problem because they have the content laid out in a way that sort of kind of lines up with what these language exams typically include. And so really all you have to do is consume the content, learn it, move on to the next thing. So what happened for me when I took that language proficiency exam? I didn't even get past A1. And so, at first I felt shame, I felt like a fraud, because I had this feeling that I've just improved so much in these last few months. And I didn't understand it because I knew there were some things that I learned that were definitely at least A2 level. Because like I said, I've taken German A1 and A2 level courses before in college, and so I know I've learned some things that should make me A2. And so it became this existential question of did this test just invalidate all of my progress? And obviously no. So as cliche as it may sound, this test doesn't define me, and it was one test that had 10 multiple choice questions, and the main reason that I didn't pass it was because I didn't know one verb that I know I would have learned in A2 level. I just didn't remember that one verb, and a few of the questions had some restaurant vocabulary. There are these very specific things that just happen to be on that exam that I didn't know. And not to say that they're not useful, because they definitely are. It brought up an important point. Learning what only seems useful to you is definitely an enjoyable way to do things, but it shouldn't be the sole purpose of language. And so if we really get back down to the fundamentals of why people learn a language, it's about communication. So if you plan on, actually communicating with someone, you're not going to need to know just the things that are relevant to yourself. You're also going to need to know what's relevant to them. So while learning language should be an enjoyable experience, and you should find a way to have fun with it, there are just some things that you should learn. It's kind of like if you want to become a chef, but you only cook the recipes you like. Or if you don't even know how to hold a chopping knife properly, but you get really into molecular gastronomy. It's super interesting, but there's gonna be a point where not learning those skills will just come back to bite you. So maybe you're like me and you feel that in the last few months you have been more in that felt progress category instead of the measurable progress category. And so for the next 3 months, I'm going to spend some more time working on some measurable progress goals, which some of this includes using this grammar drills book that I saw recommended on Elise Speaks channel, as well as using some more of this German textbook that I already had. I didn't really love it, but it's a resource that I could easily just spend a few minutes a day working on. Also, while I was taking my German classes in college, I made a huge workbook of all the different verbs that I had to learn from the textbook. And so that's also available on my Etsy if you're interested in it. It's 83 verbs, I think. That should take you all the way through A2. So I'm going to start reviewing that and try to use some things like my other vocabulary sheets so I can make kind of mind maps with words and things like that, try and connect everything so that I get a more holistic and enjoyable experience. And I'm actually really excited about it because even though it can be nice to have a more fluid way of studying and you can kind of do whatever you want, there's just a part of me, I'm an engineer in my day job, and I like concrete, measurable things, so just something about me is ready for something more challenging and structured. And so if you got to the end of this video, I want to know what you do to measure your progress in language learning. Is it by seeing the percentage of words that you get correct on your Quizlet, studying? Do you have a set vocab list where you just learn 50 words a week or something? What is it that you do? Let us know in the comments so we can all discuss and kind of compare what we're doing. Really looking forward to it, and I'll see you next week. I find that whenever I get something wrong on a test, I just never forget it. Yeah, I remember when I was taking organic chemistry in college, I got one question wrong on one of my first exams, and after that, I never forgot that ever again. So that's why you shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes, because those are some of the best opportunities for you to learn something and never forget it. I like to call this my space-time fabric shirt because it looks like space-time fabric. By the way, did you know that instead of doing 3 like this, which is what Americans do, Europeans tend to count 3 like this? Okay. Is that true? How do you count to 3? Do you use your thumb? Like thumb, pointer? Yeah? Yeah, he said yes.